Hi, good morning everybody out there, and thank you so much for tuning in to another of the Talking Cafes for the Rural Community Council of Somerset. I'm Izzy Sylvester and I am the village agent over in West Somerset. And this morning I have two fabulous guests as ever, but I have two special guests because they are spiritual leaders in our communities. The reason I've invited Kenneth, who is a Christian leader over in the parish of Alcombe, and Jane, is that they are the two prevalent religions, Christianity that is, and Buddhism over here in West Somerset. I understand that others of you out in the rest of Somerset might be watching in this and thinking, hang on a minute, I am involved in another spiritual religion that I would like to talk about how important that is or how it's helping people. If so, do get in touch with me, Izzy Sylvester, if that is something you would like to talk about. But here today we have Reverend Kenneth Cross and Jane Moat. Can you tell me, Kenneth, so I have been, as we all have been, going through some very difficult personal times. We have been all out supporting our communities in these very difficult times. And I am very clear for myself what I've had to do to get myself geared up for each day, which has been full of difficulties quite often. And for me, what I've been doing is doing a little bit of chanting and asking really for a courageous, compassionate attitude and fortitude to take me through these difficult days. And that's the reason I've asked you both here today to let people know out there what you do every morning to gear up for these difficult days and how your spiritual traditions help you gear up to get through those difficult days. So just in a practical, everyday sense, Kenneth, what are you doing? What are you doing to get you through a difficult day where you know you're going to be seeing vulnerable people struggling? You may indeed be struggling yourself. What are you doing?
Well, that's a really good question, Izzy. And I think I would start the day, I suppose, first of all, by acknowledging that, yes, I'm struggling too. And I think because we're all struggling, these are tough times. And I think that's a really good point to start, not pretend that I'm somewhere else, but actually to sort of be where I am. And I won't say too much because I don't want to take up all the time this morning, but I will sit. It begins by sitting. I'll light a candle. We do have, within the Anglican tradition, we have sort of morning prayers that I will say. In a way, that's not the important thing, though. It's about sitting, about silence, about acknowledging where I'm at, and entrusting that into the gift that is given, which for me I would call God. Other traditions would use different language, but I entrust myself into the gift. And I think it's something to do with acknowledging that today, first of all, isn't about how much I can do, but it's about gift. It begins with gift.
Thank you.
That's so interesting because I was going to use the word gratitude. That's in my Buddhist practice. We try to remember to have gratitude for everything that's around us. And now that's not just the good things, but it's also the obstacles that we get, because that's how we try and strengthen ourselves, through facing our obstacles rather than trying to hide from them. But we try and face them, we try and have strength and courage to overcome them, and to find a way to get to, not just to get by, but maybe through helping others, giving encouragement to others, it kind of also gives encouragement to ourselves. Because, of course, as we do, Kenneth, I'm not very far away, I'm not somewhere else. And these difficult times are difficult for everybody in different ways. Even if it's even if you're worried about someone else and you feel that you're okay yourself. And I start the day through sitting, but through chanting. So Izzy mentioned chanting. So I chant the phrase Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and it's to kind of acknowledge that there's everything around us outside there in our environment, and that we are part of that environment as well. And rather than be separate from it, there we are. It's a difficult world. It has its joys as well, but we try to have gratitude for everything that's there and to connect with it, really. And in connecting with our environment, we connect with the difficulties and also with the people around us who can give us hope and help, even if they are in difficulties too. And obviously that's reciprocal, that we can as well.
I think that's an interesting thing, and I'm pretty much guessing for you, Kenneth, that you would feel the same, because I often have clients. I had a super lady phone me last week about something I'd helped her with, and she was quite overwhelmed with gratitude. But, you know, what can I do for you? But what I said was just simply helping you. How you don't know how good that has made me feel, and that's enough. And I think that is the thing with our your compassionate work, my compassionate work. We are feeling so good. That's helping us feel mentally strong because we know we're helping others. And I think that's the important spiritual link, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there's something in there's a Christian tradition, and I think it's at the heart of all religious traditions in some way or another. It's about compassion, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it's got something to do with that sense that we actually we're taken out, not in a sort of transcendent way, but we're taken out of our self-consciousness to engage with the other, whoever they may be. And in a sense, when I'm sat, it's not a conscious thing that's going on in here. In fact, to be honest, first thing in the morning, not a lot going on in here, I can tell you. But it's a much more liminal thing that's going on at a deeper level, where you're the burdens that you're carrying, that sometimes the rubbish from night that's just been swirling in it's not rubbish actually, but it can feel like it. But it's actually a sort of a prayer that's going on even in the dark hours, and sometimes the struggle and the wrestle that we go through. I like to think of that as prayer. It doesn't feel like it at the time, but it's a sort of a wrestle with the realities of the world. And there's a massive amount of loneliness and isolation and struggle going on. And if I experience just a touch of that, then in a way it's a solidarity with others. And I think for me that's that's what I think my Christian prayer is. And in a way that's what Jesus is about, that engagement with suffering. Direct engagement with suffering. There's nothing heroic about that for me, because it's not about me, but it's just about the reality. It's already there. I don't have to embrace it. The suffering's already there, and we engage with that. And somehow in that paradox, we find life and an ability to engage with others through the day in a compassionate way.
Yes, it's that acknowledgement of other people as well, isn't it? So, I mean, if one's practice is purely selfish, like how can I be better, or how can I be happy, but it doesn't involve engagement with other people, it's not, for me, it's not a very useful practice. And I think, like you're saying, Kenneth, the Buddhism I practice is very much to do with not retiring from the world and escaping from the problems, but being out there with other people, to share, really, and to try, and as you were saying, Izzy, to try through engagement with other people to support and give hope. And in exchange, we are feel supported and give and have hope ourselves. And I liked your words, Kenneth, of the liminal, the liminal part of life, rather than be very practical and scientific about how it all works. The fact that we are part of a huge environment, with so much going on every level. It's too much sometimes to think about, but to rest and to try and not think it through, but think through our relationships with others, and our desire for hope and for energy and strength and courage to get through life, not just to survive, but to actually make a difference and create value. that really then makes life worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, I like that, Jane. It's a paradox, isn't it? There's sort of an enigma in there that in order to engage with the real practical world, you're also saying it's not just about the physicality. There's something deeper going on. It's not something you can necessarily pin down, but by engaging with that, you're actually better equipped to deal with the real physical material world.
Which is really why I was really keen for you both to talk, and maybe talk in the future to offer a hand out to people who are out there in our communities. They may be feeling they haven't got that spiritual strength, that spiritual belief, that spiritual knowledge that you both have, that you can draw on to get out and do those practical things. And for people out there to know that you are there, that they can connect easily to both the FDI Buddhist groups that are very active in all of Somerset and West Somerset, and the Anglican Church. You are there and ready to have a kind of down-to-earth, common sense, practical talk about how it can just help in everyday life. And that's what I was hoping to achieve today, because spirituality it's kind of become not a dirty word, but a word that people are found quite difficult to engage about and think about. Things like mindfulness, which is indeed exactly what you've just both described, sitting there, thinking, focusing on the moment, drawing on your spiritual strength. What is that if that's not mindfulness? But it's almost like those type of practices have come to the forefront, whereas all the spiritual and incredible spiritual traditions that we've had for thousands of years don't seem to be so much at the forefront. So I'm really keen to promote the spiritual practices and religions that we have in Somerset, who can help everybody out there.
It's such an enigma, isn't it, Izzy? This idea of spirituality, you know, either you've got it or you haven't, and it's such a difficult one to discuss in a way. But we can all be human beings. We can all communicate and talk and hope and wish and love together. There's lots of different words one could use, and it's to do with that really. I mean, if you like, in my path of faith, kind of, you know, I was a Christian. I was brought up as a Christian, and then although I didn't follow the church, 20 years ago, I came across Buddhism, and it felt the right philosophy for me. And it is a philosophy in many ways, although one could also call it a religion and a spiritual practice. But it's one that it's having a goal, having a goal each day to do something and to be fired up by that, and to not let it go and not to give up. And one can do that in many ways, but it does, of course, it does help when you speak to someone. And if you're feeling lost, the last thing you kind of can find is the goal or a way of picking yourself up. And it does help to talk to other people. I agree.
Yeah, I also find it interesting what you just said, is the traditional religions aren't as much in the fore. But you know, you might sound strange coming from a vicar, but I quite celebrate that, if I'm honest, because I think if a tradition, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Christianity, whether it's Islam, or any other religious tradition, if it's able to be self-effacing and let go of its own hubris a bit, it's actually then brings good things into the world. And I think an awful lot of modern spirituality has come out of some of the great traditions. And the less we're having to shout about, well, that's Christian, that's Buddhist, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it's not about that. It's about the reality of compassion in the world. I mean, I'm deeply committed to my Christian faith, and particularly the life of Christ, his life, death, resurrection. I think is profoundly meaningful. I'm less committed to, although I do it, and I love many of the traditions, but I'm less wanting to shout around and sort of inflict a lot of religious bling on people. It just doesn't help today. Yet we're here because of some of that in the past. So I mean, I celebrate that, and I think being able to engage in this sort of conversation, and for people who are perhaps alone today, feeling, well, there might be somebody you could just talk with and not feel you're going to get hit over the head by a religious hammer, but just to talk openly. You know, that's wonderful.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Kenneth. I mean, religion is really a cultural thing, isn't it? And it's arisen, various religions have arisen from different cultural bases throughout history. And we should really look at them with interest, and they all have a different context in many ways. And, you know, I sometimes question, why on earth am I following Buddhism, which doesn't come from the West? I mean, it's very odd. It started in India and spread out towards Japan. And really the form of Buddhism I'm following is Japanese, but it's also a very international and very contemporary philosophy, which is completely relevant to today. And it's just by chance that I came across it, and that's why I follow it. But as you say, it's not a hammer to hit someone over the head with. You know, each person needs to hear and discuss and be open-minded to how they want to change. If they're suffering, what is it that they're suffering about? And really, whatever gives them hope, so long as it benefits them and doesn't hurt anyone else, then that's great. And I think that is the thing; it shouldn't hurt other people.
And that's where religions of all varieties have gone so wrong, isn't it? And I mean, I think, to be fair, it's something to do with human nature, not specifically religion. But I think it poisons religion as much as any other part of human culture. And I think that way of letting go is at the heart of good, what I would call good religion. And I'm not the judge of it, of course, but that's how I've come to see it. And actually, as an aside, I've drawn a huge amount of riches myself from Buddhism. You know, I just like to get treats from anywhere, really. But I'm very clear at the same time. I'm very clear on my own Christian. I mean, I am a follower of Christ. But that's the center of my daily prayer and the center of my life. But you know, so it's a paradox. I can be absolutely committed to that, but because I am, it means I can actually draw from all sorts of things and not be insecure about it. You know, and I think that it's the insecurity and fear, isn't it, that causes so much trouble.
I was just going to say, yes, fear and insecurity. That's what causes the extremes of various religious movements. I mean, what's central to my day is creating value for myself and others. And if I can create value in a way that gives hope, that gives pleasure, that creates a deeper happiness than simply, oh, well, I'll buy someone this thing and then they'll be forever happy. But a much deeper happiness about feeling more secure about themselves, understanding themselves more, and creating value in maybe small things. Maybe sometimes people create too much, have too much desire for something in particular, which actually isn't going to benefit them. But actually, if they can have a better relationship within their family, which obviously takes work, maybe have a better contentment with what they have financially or whatever, or really create an environment within themselves where they can better themselves financially, if that's what's going to make them more secure and more satisfied to raise their family. I mean, there's so many problems out there which feel like insurmountable, but if you have the courage and the determination to do something about it, and you seek help, because not everything can be done by yourself, but you determine to somehow make it work for you, then one can move forward. And sometimes people just feel stuck, and that's often a reason for feeling unhappy. But of course, we don't have to be unhappy to follow a path of faith. We can also be very happy and strong.
But I was thinking that is where either of you two guys come in. If we've got people out there today or during the following weeks who see this broadcast and they're feeling a bit stuck in their life, they're either a Christian, in which case they could get in touch with Kenneth. A lot of people have always been interested in Buddhism, haven't done anything about it. at least they've got today a link of something quite practical they can do, just to have a little chat, see if it's something that might support them moving forward. But I think the small things in life, getting phased out by the big picture of whatever you're going through, is not the way to go. And in terms of contentment, it's those small things, I think, that you can focus on every day. So it could be as simple as smiling at someone on the street and saying hello. And that could make somebody's day. And that is so small, but it's really, really worth doing, isn't it?
You're so right, Izzy. Yeah.
No, go on, Jane.
Oh no, I was just going to say that you're so right. Just to create, because the big picture can be so huge, and that's why one can be struggling. But to do something right now, today, not just in a few hours, but maybe right now. Those are things which are within our grasp. And smiling, I mean, not something that costs anything, but to give someone a bit of pleasure, and not to do it with a sense of, then, with a sense of complaint, or they're not going to like me smiling or something like that. But just to genuinely and humanly give something that is free and that isn't to put anyone down, and it's not to complain, and it's not to signal that you're very unhappy, but something very simple. Yeah.
I think I absolutely, sorry, I've just had to charge my machine, which suddenly flashed and said it was out of charge. It was quite a nice little spiritual illustration, isn't it? Because we all need recharged. Sorry, did I interrupt you there, Jane? Did you finish?
No.
I apologise. I think it's something as well about that unself-consciousness that allows the overspill without us. I think when we try too hard, we end up doing stuff to people, and I hate being done to. And we don't want to be do-gooders, do we? But there's something I feel about heart of Christianity. I mean, Jesus said, "Freely you have received, freely give." That sense that we receive that gentleness upon ourselves and compassion, just to know that actually, do you know what? I'm loved, and that's a strange thing to say. We're not comfortable with that, but I think when we're able to receive that sense of compassion and being loved, it overspills without us trying too hard, and that it's in our countenance. It's about the number of times over the years that people have said to me, "Oh, Kenneth, you really helped," and I've got no memory or consciousness of ever having been engaged. I've also got a number of memories of trying hard to help someone and it all going badly wrong. So there's something in that, isn't there?
Yeah, but it's back to what you were both saying earlier. We are all in it together. You both, by being spiritual leaders, are not somehow in a superior place, because you both experience the same difficulties, or potentially each day in your waking life. And I think the more people realize that we've all been through tough times, or we're all going through, and it's that total interrelated, we are all in it together.
Yes, you're right, Izzy. It's we are all equal, and we all deserve respect. It's not, if you're a leader, then you have to have the respect given to you, and everyone else has to bow down. It's not at all that. And I think in Buddhism, certainly there is no hierarchy. That the more responsibility, if you like, you have, the more you are there to support the people around you, rather than have a cloak of importance or anything like that. It's knowing how to support and being there as much as you can, because you're not immortal, but as much as you can, you're there for other people, and you try and give your time. But it doesn't mean that you haven't got foibles and weaknesses and times when you need to switch off.
No, it's interesting actually. One of my favorite words is one that's come from the Buddhist tradition, I believe. But Jane, you know far more about this than me. But I never know how to pronounce his name. Was it Thich Nhat Hanh? How do you pronounce him? Vietnamese. But he talked.
Tradition, sorry.
Yeah, no, well, this is the thing. There's so much. I mean, it's the same as Christianity. There's just a massive breadth, isn't there? But he talks about interbeing, which I think is a lovely word. Interbeing, that we are all interconnected, and I think, I mean, Christianity is infamous, sadly, for some of its hierarchy. But I think at its very best, actually, it's about, if you want to be great, you serve. You know, and even the word minister, which is used in Christianity a lot, just means servant. So, and so often, of course, ego and self-importance take over all that, and it becomes something other and something horrible. But at its best, it is about that. You know, I think it was said of Jesus, he came not to serve, but to serve and to give his life. You know, and something about that outpouring of self that actually doesn't only bring a gift to others, but it actually liberates us as well from our ego. You know, and I've got an ego.
Yeah, the ego has a lot to answer for, doesn't it? It's like, you know, we talk about all the different ways that we can damage ourselves and others, and you know, through you know, jealousy and ignorance and willful, you know, kind of not understanding someone else and hurting people in various ways and being jealous. I've said jealous, but you know, all those kind of negative aspects, which are very, well, they can be unconscious, but they can be very conscious as well. But really, what you really want to do is to create value, and that also means, it doesn't just mean the helping, the kind of helping the support of other people. It also means growing, becoming strong, becoming more creative, becoming happier in who you are and what you are, accepting yourself for who you are. And if there are things that you really don't like about yourself, and they're truly distasteful for other people as well, maybe, then you should be working on that as well. But it's about becoming your bigger self rather than living very small and fearful and ignorant about how you can change. So it's about becoming the big shining person that you can be, and that's your kind of role through life if possible. But again, you should be kind of pushing other side, kind of elbowing other people as you become that great.
And when it comes down to the practical things, especially in this sort of really time when people are really isolated and stuff, sometimes it can take just a little bit of humility to think, there's nothing complicated this morning, Kenneth, just pick the phone up. You know? And sometimes it just comes down to, well, okay, just pick the phone up. And then a number of times that I've been having grandiose thoughts about, you know, what I could be doing today, and it's not, pick the phone up. Pick the phone up, you have a conversation with somebody, and more often than not, I've come off the end of the phone feeling that I've been enriched, and I've not, you know, it's amazing, isn't it, how often that happens?
That's so interesting, Kenneth. Yes, we've had recently in our Buddhist practice what we've called the 0, 1, 2, 3 campaign. It's just a way of encouraging us, particularly through the COVID, but it's been, I think we started it before. So the 1 is 1 hour of chanting, which gives us the hope and the strength and the kind of the focusing of our faith. The 2 is 20 minutes of study, because we need to know why we're doing this and what it signifies throughout our practice. The 3 is picking up the phone to 3 people a day, which is quite difficult sometimes, or communicating with 3 people. Of course, it could be talking face to face, but that's been difficult. And the 0 is 0 complaints. So no complaining about what's happening. Just get out there and be positive.
Do you find this? I like that, actually. You know, because that sort of echoes a little bit. You know, with me. I mean, I sit down, but I've got it here. I've got a prayer rope that I just use for and it's actually Eastern Orthodox, so it's outside of my particular tradition. But I just use it. It just helps me to that would be the 1, I suppose. And then I do read. Sometimes it's the Bible. Sometimes it's a book. This is my favourite little book here. You can see it's been used rather a lot. But everybody has a friend, and I call these books friends because, you know, and whatever your religious tradition, we all have a particular friend, I think, who helps us. And then the 3 is the but I find the 0 thing about no complaints always brings me back to 1 again, because I do have complaints. I could be a grumpy old So,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then you just have to come back to the one again and then giving it back over.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I love that. I really like that. If I can steal that, that'd be really.
Good. 0, 1, 2, 3.
0, 1, 2, 3. It's great, isn't it? I mean, I'm enjoying this conversation because I think, you know, in a way, I mean, it's funny you look on the screen and we're all neatly divided, but actually, in reality, we're not, are we? And, I mean, I'm not Kenneth the Christian. I'm Kenneth. You're not Jane the Buddhist. You're Jane, and so we could go. Fundamentally, it's that interconnectedness as human beings, and we've found out our different religious traditions which have enriched us and help hopefully enable us to enrich others. And I mean, I think it's incredibly important, you know. But
I think it's very important. Sorry, Kenneth. It's important what you said. The word enriching. It really. I mean, my practice has really enriched me because I am trying to be the best I can, and of course, hopefully, in 2 or 3 years' time, I'll be more better than I was 10 years ago, and better than I am today. Only in the sense that you try and forge someone yourself, someone who's strong, who's what's the word we use these days? Not resistant.
Resilient.
Resilient, but also happy. Happy amongst everything else, and whatever advantages you're born with, you can still make that better and be stronger. And of course, if you start with not very much, then you've got everything to gain, really, haven't you? So yeah, it's using our practice to enrich our lives and also to see hope and to see positivity wherever possible.
And I think if somewhere, I mean, as a Christian, I suppose if I had one mantra or one line that would sum it up for me is God is love, and I think love is the compassion. That's the thing, isn't it? It's the fundamental reality, I believe, in behind the whole universe, and somehow it's the only. I think it's the only measure, isn't it? And there's a paradox, isn't it? Because if I start measuring how loving I am, I stop being loving. It's like you can't be humble. You can't know you're humble, can you?
Yeah.
And it's that's where I think it's that self-effect, that self-transcending thing where you just get beyond all that sort of nonsense, really. And somehow to put it in a really cheesy way, the love flows.
That's so interesting. I mean, it's funny because we don't actually use the word love in Buddhism, but we do use the word happiness to create happiness, because the purpose of life is it not just to enjoy things and to be able to enjoy them. Now, of course, terrible things happen. We could be in a war zone, and there's certainly difficult to find happiness there. But that ability to find it in every corner of our being, and to enjoy it. And I think I started by saying that despite obstacles, that we try to strive to resolve them, to resolve the obstacles. And of course, the obstacles are to our happiness. And it doesn't mean, okay, if we've got loads of money, we're going to be happier than someone who hasn't, because of course we know that's not the case. We all are going to suffer from things in life. We're all going to, many of us will suffer from disease and old age, and we all will die. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So despite that, everyone's going to suffer from something, and that's maybe the fear of death, and it's certainly difficulties that might come through life, and that's for everyone. No one, as we say in Buddhism, even sages and worthies, they could even have parking penalties or whatever. It doesn't include everyone. So it doesn't include anyone. So we do, the happiness really is what we go for, and it's a deeper, stronger happiness of knowing ourselves and knowing that we can support others, even if it's just with a smile or a word, picking up the phone, and being there for others.
And in a way, happiness and compassion and love, I mean, in a way, they're different facets of the same mystery that's there, aren't they? There is something profoundly happy or blessed or whatever word we might use in our different traditions about learning that path, isn't there?
Yeah.
And yet you can, and I think it's deeper than, I mean, in our tradition, we have this distinction between happiness in terms of the way our culture tends to think of it, and joy. And that joy is something that can be there in the midst of anguish and despair.
Yeah.
You know, you can have that both at the same time. And I suspect that's the kind, is that the kind of happiness you're talking about?
Yes, so joy is the kind of happiness I'm talking about. Yes, your kind of joy. And compassion, of course, is threaded through everything we try to do. And that includes compassion for ourselves. You know, when we're feeling tired or anxious or stressed, then we need to give ourselves a slack, not just keep beating ourselves up and saying, well, I've got to go and visit someone else now. No, worry about it. But, you know, we need to give ourselves that time as well. Definitely. In order to be strong and healthy to help our families and other people. We've had that little bit of a rest or whatever it is that we need.
Absolutely. Yeah, it comes back to that thing for me that freely you've received, freely give. We're not always very good at receiving, are we? You know, I think somehow we feel we've got to do more. And sometimes do less, sit, and you'll do more.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, Kenneth. Yeah.
So thank you so much, both for coming on today. I hope people out there have listened closely to what you've been saying, that it will support people if they would like to get in touch with any of the churches, the Christian churches across Somerset, or the Buddhist organisations that are there. Just I'd like to say from a personal point of view, my colleagues out there in Somerset, the village agents, we are all working from a non-judgmental, compassionate standpoint. So please do not feel afraid of phoning us. We are there to help you, because this, a spiritual, in a very general sense, is the standpoint we are coming from. We are there to help. So please get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us through our main helpline every day of the week. We will be there to help you. So thank you again, Kenneth and Jane. It's been marvellous having you. And maybe we'll see you both again at another time. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Izzy. Thank you, Jane. It's been good to get to know you.
Yeah, thank you, Kenneth. And well done, Izzy, for everything you're doing. Yeah.
Indeed.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.